What's up, guys? I'm super excited to have Mr. Rand Fishkin here, who is the former founder and CEO of our beloved Moz. And right now, he's the founder and CEO of SparkToro, and also the man behind Whiteboard Fridays with his slick hairstyle and glorious mustache. What happened to your mustache, Rand? I was really hoping that you'll be sporting it today,
No, I got to shave it, a year and a half ago. It feels good to have it gone. It's very humid in Seattle, and when that happens, the mustache just...
I can imagine. Anyway, we're very happy to have you here, and we have a lot of fans for you here in India and who are really excited to listen to you and pick your brain as much as they can.
Wonderful. I'm happy to help however I can.
Amazing. So I'll start off with the first question, which comes from SparkToro's blog, which you wrote recently, which is quite scary, to be very honest, how you wrote about how Google is pretty much taking away most of the clicks. One main thing that I want to talk about is that you have mentioned that close to 48.9% of the clicks result in 0 clicks, and it's been growing for 12% for the past 3 years. Now, that's quite scary if you ask me. Now, my question is, if that's the case, is SEO even worth it?
First off, absolutely. If pay-per-click is worth it, and I think we can pretty easily prove to ourselves the value of pay-per-click, right? Ranking in the paid search results, drawing clicks from there. You can see in the data, right? Nearly half of all searches that start on Google in English, so to be clear, in English, that start on Google end with no click at all. But when you compare paid and organic, it's still, the ratio is about 11 organic clicks to every 1 paid click. So there's a tremendous amount of organic traffic. And by the way, I haven't confirmed this with JumpShot, but we are nearly certain that in languages outside of English and in countries outside of the United States and the UK and Canada, the share of clicks is greater. Basically, the share of clicks going out is greater. Google is answering fewer queries right in the search results in non-English languages than they are in English, generally speaking. And that's because they mostly build those click cannibalizing features in English first, and then they roll them out in other languages. And so English sort of takes the brunt of Google's, click taking activity. And other languages, it's less so. Other regions, it's less so. You can see this. I did a big analysis of clicks, searches and clicks in the EU, all the member countries of the EU. And you can see that smaller ones, right, places like Switzerland and Finland, spots like that, Google had rolled out far fewer of those features, and thus more of the clicks were going to paid and organic, fewer were 0 click. So, I think there's still a tremendous amount of opportunity, even in English, and outside of English, even more so.
Yeah, especially outside of English, if you think about it, especially in a country like India, right? Because there are so many different languages. And what Google and both Facebook is banking on is the new wave of people who are coming onto the internet.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And in India, in a lot of other countries, I think maybe less true in India, but definitely true in a lot of emerging, even more so emerging economies. There's tremendously less competition than what you see in English in the EU, in the UK, and Canada. I have talked to SEOs from Central and South America, from parts of Africa, especially Eastern and Western Africa, from the Middle East, right, Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. And they tell me, man, there is so much opportunity, right? It's like the Wild West. It's like SEO was 10 years ago in the United States, 15 years ago in the United States. So I think that globally there's still incredible opportunity. And to be very frank, the SEO is just easier in a lot of those places. If you produce pretty good content, if you get a few good links, you get some decent coverage, you build a fairly credible brand, you can rank.
Yeah.
That is not true, in the United States in English in most sectors. That's the bar for like page 3 in the US.
I know. I think that's super true. And where do you think, or what do you think you would attribute the fact that for every one paid click, you're getting 11 organic searches? Is it mostly long tail?
I think it's three things. I think it's long tail. I think it's irrelevant ads. There are still many searches where the ads just aren't relevant to what the searcher is looking for. They're more commercial. The searcher is looking for more informational. And the third one is that there are still a huge number of searches that are non-commercial in intent, right? They're searches for an actor's name, searches for what movie did this person appear in, searches for songs and lyrics, searches for videos. That kind of stuff is not going to draw paid advertising because the advertiser knows that they're not going to get the click. It's going to drag down their Google Ads score, so they don't even bother bidding, which is smart, right? You shouldn't bid on those kinds of things. I would say for highly commercial intent search queries where the searcher knows that they're looking for commercial results and the paid advertisers know that they're looking for those searchers, the share of clicks is closer to 50-50, right?
Got it.
So it's just a bias in the chunky middle, the long tail, and for all these branded queries and informational queries where there's no real reason to have paid search.
Got it. So just for some people in the audience who might not know what zero clicks is, would you like to share some light on that?
Oh, sure. So basically the methodology that I had with JumpShot is if someone goes to Google and performs a search query and the browser shows that they did not visit any page directly from that search result. They essentially either ended their search session, they performed a different search query, or they closed their browser, they clicked on one of their bookmarks instead, that kind of thing. Then we counted that as a zero click. Essentially, they clicked nothing from Google's search results. Now, there are ways, there are some edge cases where you can click on something in Google's search result and not go to a different page. I think the people also ask box, right? You can technically click that. It opens a little drop down. We would still count that as a zero click search.
Got it.
As long as they never visited one of those URLs, that would still be counted as a zero click search. So it's more zero traffic.
Got it.
Got it. A zero traffic query sends no traffic out of Google to anyone else.
Got it. And also your report mentions how a good portion of that search queries are going to Google-owned assets itself, which is like a significant amount. And
yeah, I think this is another scary reality. Also more true in the United States than anywhere else. And I don't think we captured the full amount that is going to Google because on mobile, JumpShot can't see clicks that result in an app.
Yeah.
So if, for example, you click on a Google search result on your mobile device and you go to the YouTube app, JumpShot can't see the YouTube app opening. They can only see what happens in the browser. So we're probably missing some of that, which means the share is even higher for Google.
Yeah.
But that being said, we're talking about Google taking 10% of all clicks, around 5% of all queries, and sending them back to properties that they or their parent company Alphabet owns.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaky, right? Like that.
Absolutely.
You can imagine that in the long term, if that trend continues, 10 years from now, we could be talking about a world where Google kind of owns the internet. It's just, it's a very different kind of place than it is today. I hope that doesn't happen. And I think and
it shouldn't happen also, because the kind of influence a big corporation like Google has on people is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know. I wouldn't be very comfortable giving that kind of responsibility to a company like Google. Having said that, what do you think is the future of SEO considering all of these factors?
I think that SEO is going to continue to be a very, very lucrative, very high quality investment in digital marketing for at least the next 5 years and maybe longer than that. We'll have to see how the trends go. I don't think it is not dead or dying by any means. It is simply evolving. I think one of the biggest evolutions that we're going to see in SEO is what I've been calling OnSERP SEO.
Yeah.
I gave a presentation in Brighton last
Yes.
year about this, and basically, this is the concept that SEO for a long time has meant how many visits does my website get from Google. I think that probably needs to evolve into how am I influencing the information people receive from Google. And that might not ever result in a click to my website. That might result in me controlling what shows up in the knowledge panel or the knowledge graph boxes. It might mean I control what shows up in the featured snippet. It might mean that I'm answering the queries that are answered through Google Home devices and voice answers and Alexa and Apple Siri and those kinds of things. And that stuff is, I think that's still pretty cutting edge. There are very few search marketers who are pitching that to their clients or pitching it internally to their teams. There are very few who are, I think, measuring it or attempting to measure it. And to be totally honest, I think more software is needed here. I think that companies like Moz and SEMrush and Ahrefs and other rank monitoring tools, Stat, right, need to essentially be able to show you, hey, here's the information that you are able to control when a search query is answered. Here's how your OnSERP SEO is doing. And I think that's going to be a big part of SEO's future. So this is going to be an exciting field for a very long time. It's just a very dynamic one. Changes all the time.
Perfect. Thank you very much for putting those myths to rest, Rand, because I think I've been listening to SEO is dead for the past 10 years now. And hopefully...
Well, as soon as people stop using Google entirely, then SEO will be dead.
Yeah, I think you can say that again. So in essence, what you're trying to say is, instead of trying to rank just one website, try to take over the entire SERP. That's what you're trying to say, right?
I think, and not necessarily, you don't need the entire SERP. If you can dominate the top section, right? The featured snippet, the first couple of results, and it doesn't have to be your website, right? If you say to yourself, gosh, my website is not that strong, it's not that powerful, it can't rank, but here's this other website in my space that ranks really well. Let me pitch them a piece. I don't even need the link. I'm not trying to get a link. I'm just trying to get them to to provide the information that I want people who do this search to get, right? Yeah. I want to influence the way people think about this problem or the way that they solve it or whatever it is, right? And so that is a much less difficult ask than, hey, would you link to my site? Or, hey, can I place this article on your site with a link? What you're essentially saying is, hey, I have a great piece that I think would get you a lot of traffic. What do you think about me publishing it on your site? Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's a much easier pitch, right? And now if that piece can rank and you can get the featured snippet, and you can get the voice answer, you can get the knowledge panel, that's pretty interesting, right? That I think is influencing a lot of searchers.
Yeah. In fact, if we try to considering the fact that Google is to a certain extent, to a large extent rather, is biased towards its own properties, you can definitely leverage those properties to try to dominate as many positions as possible also.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, being able to put something on YouTube, right, and get that video up at the top there, being able to put something on whatever it is, Medium, or pitching something to a major media outlet like, the New York Times is probably pretty tough, right? But certainly it's much easier to get into something like The Verge or, getting on top of a site like Stack Exchange or putting something, pitching a piece to TechCrunch or Wired or Engadget, right? And these are all in the tech space, but this is true in pretty much every space. There's these publications that accept outside contributions. That's
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In strategy, right? You're not thinking about how do I get the link. You're thinking about how do I get the placement.
Yeah. So, I think many people who are watching this right now will be thinking, hey, what is the significance of backlinks then? How do you like take that?
Yeah, I think that links are going to matter for a very long time to come. Again, at least the next 3 to 5 years, maybe longer than that. I think what's changing, and you can see Google reacting to this really strongly in English, is you need links from the right places, right? And brand mentions from the right places. Google is getting really, really sensitive to the right links rather than any links. And I think part of that is Google perceiving that the press is giving them a really hard time about misinformation. Danny Sullivan, who works at Google, used to run Search Engine Land, now works at Google, talked about this today, where he was essentially saying that Google is trying to identify the most authoritative places and what they're saying about a topic or a subject, and then pointing them back to a place. There was an interview I think The Guardian did yesterday with one of Google's engineers, and they talked about essentially how in order to supply good information for queries about the Holocaust, for example, Google was looking at where are these places getting links from, where are they getting mentioned, where are they getting talked about. Okay, these are the authoritative, high quality expert sources. They link to this thing, so we're going to put that first. We're going to ignore these other sources that have many, many links from tons of different places all over the web, have done excellent SEO, but they don't provide the information that the authoritative sources are pointing to and talking about and reinforcing, so they don't get to rank. And that's a big change in the SEO world, right?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
has not historically been true. When I was in my early days of SEO, a link was a link, man.
Yeah, a link was a link.
You get a bunch of linking root domains, you're going to rank. Not true today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Google going in a better direction than what it was, because like we said, like we talked before, like how the results influence people a lot, and they cannot afford to be like putting out wrong information. Also, speaking of the future of SEO, we cannot obviously miss out on voice search. Now, a lot of people have a big misunderstanding of voice search, right? And what I like to believe voice search is that it's just a change in the UI, because the way we interact with the search engine has changed. So, but voice answers is something very different. So would you like to like shed some light on that?
Sanjay, you are the smartest person who has ever asked me, or you have asked me that question in the smartest possible way. High five, sir. Yeah, I really hate the whole, hey, is voice search changing everything? No. Voice search, to your point, is a UI change, right? If I ask my phone a question via voice, or I type it in on the keyboard, what's the difference? There's no difference. The results look exactly the same on the screen.
Yeah.
The difference is if I ask a query or type in a query and I get back a voice answer, and that is a much, much smaller percent of what's happening. Most of those voice answers are singular pieces of information that would have resulted in 0 clicks anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's
like
what was David Bowie's birthday, right?
Yeah.
What was, who's the Prime Minister of India, right? Those kinds of like very simplistic, easy answer queries where Google is going to show you or tell you a result just right off the bat, and no one's getting a click from that.
Yeah.
So I don't think voice answers is cannibalizing very much yet. Whether that's true long term, I don't know. Maybe the generation that's growing up with Alexa and Google Home and all that kind of stuff, maybe in 15, 20 years, they will be more, they'll want to listen to more stuff. But I honestly don't think so. I think a screen of results is a much better interface for most complex information versus, what's the best TV? Which flat screen TV should I buy?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? You want to listen to 50 paragraphs of exposition about, the Zenith TV is blah, 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 blah. No, you want to read, you want to look at it, you want to see the pictures, right? It's, I think for most commercial intent, navigational intent, deep informational intent queries, screen is going to be better than audio. And so I don't really worry too much long term. We'll see if there's an additional cannibalization, but I think it's going to be relatively small and in a portion of the queries that are not all that interesting to SEOs.
Perfect. So I think we have pretty much scared most of the people who are watching this so far, considering like telling how SEO is going to like take its turn in the future. So how about we tell them what are like the top 3 things they should be doing right now in terms of SEO?
Yeah. Gosh. So I think one of the things I worry a little bit about is folks who attempt to do kind of what I'd call like very classic SEO, right? It's keyword research, and then I'll produce, some unique content that matches those keywords. I'll publish that on my site. Then I'll try and reach out to people and get links. That totally worked in 2005. That is 2005 SEO for sure. Pretty effective, no doubt about it. It's gotten less and less and less effective. I think today you need to think about, as an SEO, you need to be asking your entire, the marketing team and the company, how are we building a brand that people will want to talk about? Just naturally and organically. What are we doing this week, this month, that's going to make everyone talk about us? Mention our brand on their websites, link to us, get the media talking about us, get the influential sources in our field talking about us. And that is, that's a challenge, right? That's a different kind of challenge. I think with keyword research, what you're essentially doing is trying to figure out searcher intent rather than keyword matching, right? So, someone searches for, let's say, SaaS payment provider, right? Like, okay, I want payment processing for my new company. Well, if you want to rank for payment processing, you should be thinking not about, I need to use those keywords in my title and my meta description. That's still a fine thing to do. You should be thinking about, what can I create that everyone who is influential in this field and can link to me will want to amplify and link to? Why will they do that? And then what is the searcher's intent? What information do they want from a piece of content? What would be the ideal thing that is better, way better than anything that ranks today in the top 10? Is it an easy comparison that includes pricing and speed and features and shows you that graph? And it probably isn't on your company's website because you need an independent authority. So could you go pitch that to someone who covers SaaS providers, right? Could you pitch that piece to create it for someone else? And then obviously you have your company in there and you show your features and pricing and all that. But I think that's a very different kind of SEO than what's been practiced in the past. And so those are the big things I would be thinking about as I'm building a new business. We do this with SparkToro, right? Every week I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, what can we put out there that's going to earn us attention and awareness, as opposed to, which keyword do I want to rank for?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because I think SEO is moving more towards branding rather than your old school SEO. And the more you do, I think it makes sense, because if you're like focusing on branding, it's not only going to help you in your SEO, it's going to help you in other things also, right?
Yes. And SEO is becoming so much more than links and keywords and the index, right? Google is sort of building up its intelligence in a way that it takes into account all these other factors, all these other places, right? So, I think a lot of SEOs have noticed, gosh, it sure is weird that when something starts to get hot on Twitter or Reddit or in a bunch of Facebook groups, suddenly it's also doing well in Google's search rankings. How is that? Google doesn't use those things, do they? And the answer is yeah. Google is very sensitive to activity on the web, right? Whether that's through user and usage data, or whether it's through the link graph of these social sites, or whether they're getting the social data directly or indirectly, or whether it's copied links from other places. Whatever sources it is, Google is getting that information. And so being actually popular and interesting is a requirement. It's not just, hey, I have links and I use the keywords in my title tag, why don't I rank? It's not 2005, my friend.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I think I also feel that branding is one of the best conversion rate optimizers that you can do.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, you're so right, right? I mean,
yeah,
if someone knows your brand, has heard of you, likes you,
yeah.
trusts you, your conversion rates, your effectiveness with paid search, with display marketing, with retargeting, all of that stuff goes skyrocketing up. And so, yeah, I agree. Branding is a huge, huge part. I think that's like the new link building. Branding is the new link building.
Branding is the new link building. So I think that's a key takeaway from this interview. Having said all of this, we do a lot of events, we do a lot of meetups, and pretty much every single time we do this, there is at least one guy who asks us this question. How is AI going to affect digital marketing? Do you want to take that question?
Sure. Let's see. So I am pretty skeptical that we're going to have any real AI in the next 10 years. I think we can barely get self-driving cars to work, and AI is 100 times more advanced than that. So I think most of the time when technologists talk about AI, they mean machine learning. Machine learning is just is one sort of tiny piece of artificial intelligence. It's obviously not actual artificial intelligence. It's just a component tool. Machine learning is already affecting digital marketing dramatically. You can see it. I think it's most obvious in the social networks, but Google is obviously using it too. In the social networks, what's happening, right? Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit, Pinterest, Instagram, all of these sites are essentially attempting to learn what posts from which people earn the highest engagement from other users. And then they want to show those posts to people more and more. So if you are willing to play that game, right, if you're willing to go to Instagram and say like, all right, I'm going to tap into what's going to get Instagram the highest engagement from the people who follow me, I will produce that content. It will get me lots of comments and hearts and people, spending more time on Instagram. I'm playing their game, I'm benefiting them, and therefore, and the machine is learning that my account does this well. They're going to show it to more and more and more people, thus increasing my brand visibility and my effectiveness on the platform. Now, that happens in search as well, right? Essentially, Google learns which pieces of content from which sources with what features answer someone's query successfully. Make it so that they don't click the back button and choose a different result, right? The searcher is satisfied by the query. And then they learn over time, right? So this is happening across every network. And then I think, on the marketing side, there are some nascent tools and some very sophisticated companies who are also doing machine learning on their own website and their own users, their own content, to figure out what's being effective, what's not, and then doing that same process, that machine learning process of showing the content that's going to capture the most engagement or conversions. So we're seeing this slowly emerge. It's been going on for 10 years now. It'll probably keep increasing, but I don't see this like 2 years from now there's going to be a supercomputer intelligence that takes over, I don't know, Google or Facebook, and we stop doing things the way we're doing them now. It's always more iterative than you think it is.
I think that's one of the best answers I've heard for that, because a lot of people use AI and machine learning interchangeably, and very few people. And I feel that most AI out there is just a bunch of if this, then that functions, and they call it like
right, yeah,
AI.
Exactly. AI.
It's like AI.
It seems smarter than just you type in something. Oh, it must be AI.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So speaking about AI, probably a lesser intelligent form of marketing is chatbots. Like, what is your view on chatbots? Chatbots as a marketing tool rather than a customer engagement tool. Let me be clear on that.
Yeah. I think that there's a bunch of interesting things that you can do with chatbots in certain sectors, but I think it's a pretty specific application set, right? So I have seen a few companies benefit from having chatbots, but to be honest, I have rarely seen a chatbot do better than an actual human being in chat. I'm not sure I ever have, actually. I think the thing you would say about chatbots is, well, it's better than nothing, but not as good as a person.
Got it. So
Right?
now, to put things into perspective, if you were given a choice, would you invest your money in building your subscriber list on a chatbot or an email list itself?
Email every time.
Email every time.
Absolutely email every time, because with an email address, you can do so many kinds of marketing. I think, to be fair, most of the chatbot technologies I've seen require a sign-in of some kind. That many of them do give you an email address, so that, you know, there's some crossover there. But yeah, I think email marketing is still incredibly powerful. You know, you can look at the data from, for example, MailChimp, right? And the average open rate, average open rate for a MailChimp newsletter is 20% across all their industries. You cannot, I mean, that 20% is incredible. What's the average engagement rate on Facebook? It's like 0.1%, 0.2%. I think on Twitter it's like 0.01%.
Yeah, it's
right. On Instagram's like the highest of the social networks. It's like 1%. So email is 20 times. If you have an email address, that is 20 times more likely to be seen by your email subscriber than your Instagram post is by your Instagram follower. I'd take an email address over pretty much anything.
Awesome. I think that puts a lot of questions to rest. So let's talk about something more exciting now. Let's talk about SparkToro. Like, why don't you tell us what you're building? When is it coming out? Like, what are you doing?
It's coming out pretty soon. We're planning on sending the first beta invites next week. The product is essentially, you know, the idea that we wanted to help people with, we wanted to help people solve, is really around customer research and audience intelligence. So it's this idea that you need to, if you have a customer set that you can describe, right? I'm trying to reach marketing professionals. I want to reach finance pros. I want to reach commercial fishermen. I want to reach plumbers in Canada, right? Whatever it is, whatever your audience target is, in order to reach them effectively, you need to know a bunch of information about them. How do they describe themselves? What do they talk about and share? What sources do they pay attention to, right? What do they read? Who do they follow? What YouTube channels are they watching? What podcasts are they listening to, right? Or all that kind of information. And researching that is insanely hard today, right? If I said, okay, Sanjay, we need to go figure out what yoga instructors in California are listening to. How do you do that, right? The process that we would probably use is we'd go find people we know on LinkedIn or whatever who might know someone who's in the yoga field, and then we'd ask if we could interview them, and we do that interview, and then maybe we try and build an email list through paid marketing so we could do a survey to them and get back survey data, which is not great because people aren't good at self-reporting their activities and behaviors. We'd probably do a bunch of cyber stalking. None of this stuff is effective. But what Casey and I realized is that information exists on the web, right? For almost every field, there are thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of people who post publicly all that information. They tell you who they follow. They show you what they amplify. They show you what they read and listen to and watch. They have a YouTube profile that's connected to a Twitter profile. It's connected to a LinkedIn profile. It's connected to maybe a Reddit profile or a Quora profile or a GitHub profile or any of these things, right? Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And if you get all those together, you can build sophisticated profiles of all these people. And that's what we've done. So we have 70 million of these connected profiles. That's 70 million like individuals with billions of different connections between them. And then when you search for commercial fishermen or yoga instructors California, we can come back and say, here's the podcast they listen to. Here's the YouTube channels they share. Here's who they follow on social media. Here's the websites they visit. Here's the words and phrases they use to describe themselves. Here's the hashtags they use. Here's where they're geographically located. all this sort of customer research at your fingertips. And it's kind of cool. It's cool to see it like come to life. Like we had this idea, we hoped we could do it, we weren't sure if it was possible, and now like, yeah, you can type in anything.
How do you guys do that? That's pretty awesome, to be very honest. Like,
Yeah,
to be able to like to build a profile of so many people, it makes a lot of sense, because the more you understand your audience, the lesser you have to like depend on all of these giants like your Google and Facebook. I feel that, the more you understand and the more you cater to your audience, the medium slowly disappears. It just like vanishes, and that's every marketer's dream, right?
Right.
That sounds
I
awesome.
think I think when you're doing this research, one of the problems that we kept seeing marketers encounter was they'd tell us, well, my CEO or my executive team said, hey, I want you to, get us placement in this conference, or I want to get on this podcast, or I want to get covered in this website, or I want to be here or there. And the marketer would kind of be like, gosh, I feel like that's not a good use of my time. I feel like that's not really where we're going to reach our audience, but that's where the boss wants to be, so I'll go to work trying to get that. And with SparkToro's data, you can be like, hey, boss, check it out. If you want to reach this audience, the source you mentioned is followed by less than 1% of that audience. Look at these other sources up here. They're followed by like 25% of the audience. Let's do those, right? And so I think with that data, you can make a much more compelling argument for why you should do marketing in certain places to reach the audience you want to reach.
That is amazing. I think that's something I think every marketer's dream to have, that kind of data in their fingertips. Would you like to tell the audience when it might be launched and like when it will be available for the general public?
Yeah, well, so we're sending out the beta emails next week. So if if someone goes to sparktoro.com/product, you can enter your email address. You'll get an email next week about it. And then we're going to we'll probably do the beta program, I'm guessing, for 2 to 4 weeks after that. And if it goes well, if people are like, oh my gosh, you nailed it, we love this, this is awesome, we'll probably launch it very soon, sometime in August or September. If, however, people, if you try it out, right, like Sanjay, you get in there, you try it out and you're like, gosh, Rand, Casey, I feel like it's missing this, and I wish it did this, and this data doesn't look right to me. We're going to iterate on it until you go in there and you say, I love it, this is awesome, I'm getting the data I need. We won't launch it until folks like yourself sort of give us the thumbs up on it.
That is amazing. I'm super excited for this. I'm really looking forward to it, and all the very best for the launch. Now, this is your second SaaS company that you have built, and your first one was Moz. And how are you approaching this differently from Moz, if you are approaching this differently from Moz?
No, I think this is a fairly different approach. Obviously, I hope I'm much more sophisticated this time around, right? Like I know a lot of the pitfalls of SaaS. I know what works and doesn't. I would also say that we're being much more conservative in our approach this time. So, we raised 1.3 million, which is pretty similar to what Moz raised in its first round, 1.1. But we are being very, very frugal, right? I'm deferring my salary. Casey and I are the only 2 employees, right? We're the only 2 people who work on it. We are taking our time and sort of slowly making sure that our customers and potential customers really like what we're doing before we release anything. I think Moz was very much a learning experience for me. Like, oh, let's try this, let's try that, let's see if this works, let's see if this resonates. And this is, fundamentally a different style of way of building things. It's, I think it's also a lot more customer-centered the whole way along, right? Moz was, in a lot of ways, was a vision-based company, like a vision-based product, right? I had this vision, like, oh, I want this, and then we build it. And I think I learned over time, especially with tools like Keyword Explorer, which became one of Moz's most popular tools. That was like the last thing I built, well, second to last thing I built there. is very much let me spend a lot of time with customers, seeing how they do keyword research, seeing how they do this process before. And that is true too with SparkToro. So yeah, maybe a more mature approach to building a company.
Yeah, that is amazing. So if you were to tell top 3 things every SaaS marketer should be doing, what would it be?
Gosh.
Tough one.
I think SaaS marketers should be talking to their customers and their customers as influencers on a regular basis. Most SaaS marketers do the first. They talk to customers. They don't talk to the people and publications who influence their customers. And that, I think, is a big failure, because so much behavior in SaaS is driven by sort of people paying attention to what's hot right now, what are the influential people, what are the people that I trust doing in this field, and which software should I be trying, what tools should I be trying. I think it's a mistake not to speak to those sources of influence in your market. Second thing, I think that like we talked about earlier, brand building is absolutely huge, right? If you can get your name to be recognized at a minimum, and then known and liked, and trusted, right? So I think you're always working your way up that pyramid, and it gets harder and harder at each step, but that is the second thing I was focused on, is that branding element. And then the third one, I think, is understanding your customers' objections, like potential customer buying objections, and being able to overcome those, both in the product and also in the way that you do marketing. So many marketers understand what makes some buyers buy, but they don't understand why some qualified buyers don't buy. And it's that group that usually starts out very big, and you need to work through objection after objection, and then you'll slowly shrink that and grow the people who do buy from you. That's a difficult process as well, but that's a place where interviews are priceless, right? So having the conversation, hey, what made you choose X? Why did you not choose Y, right? Hey, can you be honest, why did you choose, for example, SEMrush? Why didn't you go with Moz? Well, I didn't think they had this feature. Oh, they do have that feature. Well, I felt like blah, 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 right? You want to dig into the details of why there was that no. And I think that understanding that can be incredibly powerful, transformative for your conversion rate optimization effort.
Yeah, so while we are having this conversation, I'm having a tough time not to notice the strategically placed book behind you. So why don't you take it in front of the camera and show it to all our audience?
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, I think this. Yeah, so I wrote this book basically about my experience at Moz, and it's done nicely. I've had a fun time kind of sharing that story and experience, and hopefully a lot of folks will benefit. If you are in software as a service, if you're in search or search marketing, if you're in technology startups at all, I think that the book has a lot of painful, hard-won lessons that maybe can help folks avoid making the same mistakes I made.
Yeah, so I've just placed my order, and I've mainly placed my order because of the name, the title. It is so amazing. Who came up with it?
My wife, Geraldine. Yeah, she's
amazing.
She's the author out of the two of us.
Oh, nice. That's a beautiful title, and I think it kind of encompasses what you're trying to say within the title itself.
Yeah. That's how, right? That's how it feels to be a founder so much of the time.
Yeah.
Lost. You're supposed to be leading people, you're supposed to be leading an organization, but you feel like you don't know what you're doing, and you just hope things turn out okay.
Yeah. So I also want to probably touch upon what you're doing with Tiny Seed. I feel that's a very nice project, what you're up to. Would you like to tell more about Tiny Seed?
Yeah. So Tiny Seed is an investment fund that's using the same funding model that we used at SparkToro, which is quite unusual. So I think that, for entrepreneurs, most folks are familiar with the venture path, right? Like maybe you raise a Series A from friends and family or seed investors, angel investors, and then you sort of, try and get to milestones so that you can raise a Series A or B, depending on whether you took seed or not. And that is coming from institutional capital. And institutional capital has, what I mean by that is venture capital, growth equity, private equity, all those kinds of folks. They have very different requirements than entrepreneurs, right? Their incentives are usually really, really different from entrepreneurs. Like entrepreneurs, we are happy if we can build a successful, scaling, profitable, growing company. Venture capital fund, they're very unhappy with that, right? Moz is a good example, right? Moz is, I don't know, maybe they'll do $55, $60 million in revenue this year. It's profitable. It'll probably kick back 10% of that, 5-10% of that. Sanjay, if you and I owned that company, we would be thrilled. It'd be awesome, right? That's kicking off $5-10 million a year to us, and we'd be high-fiving and just thrilled with the company we built. But if you raise venture, it's kind of a stuck in the middle story, right? To be exciting to an investor, it's got to, it really has to sell for $500 million to $1 billion or more, or have an IPO to truly be interesting. Otherwise, it just doesn't move the needle on the fund, right? Our investors raised funds that are hundreds of millions of dollars in size. If they get back 20 or 40 million on an investment of 1 to 5 million, that seems really good, but it is not. It just doesn't work for them, right? The math of venture is, I need, these multi-billion-dollar returns, and I don't care about really any of the other companies in my portfolio because they're just not doing it. And hey, that's kind of how it goes sometimes. So I think Tiny Seed and the SparkToro funding model are trying to help create another kind of funding that can be successful for investors and for entrepreneurs, where essentially every year that the company makes profits, we can sort of choose to reinvest in growth, or we can pay out dividends, which go to our investors. And once we pay them back the 1.3 million that we raised, that money starts to go to us as well, Casey and myself, the owners of the company. And so we have a strong incentive, right, to pay them back so that we can start to participate in profit sharing. 10, 15 years of even a few $100,000 in profit a year could make this a very, very lucrative investment for our investors, right? They put in 50 grand, maybe over the next 20 years, right? They get back a couple $1 million. Super, that's great. That works great for them. It's not going to work for a venture fund, but it's going to work really well for private investors. And it can work really well for us too, right? We are not forced to grow faster or bigger or try and, kill the company getting to IPO size, which I think is the cause of why the failure rate for venture-backed companies is so much higher than the failure rate for, standard companies. I mean, I don't know if this is true in India, but in the United States.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to say, one of the worst businesses supposedly that you can be in the US is restaurants, right? Like you and I we open a restaurant, we open a pizza place, right? And we people are going to be like, oh man, that's so super risky. Guess what? Restaurants have a higher rate of survival after 5 years than venture-backed companies do.
Absolutely, right? A lot of people seem to forget that. Sometimes the most unsexy business is probably the best way to go about it.
It depends what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are entrepreneurs who are like, look, I'm going for broke. I know that 95% of the time I'm going to fail, but I want to try and build the next Facebook or Google or whatever it is, right? Okay. Hey, if that's the only thing you're interested in, fine. But I think there's a lot more of us who care about building a sustainable, profitable, interesting business over a long period of time and being able to run that the way we think it should be run. So that's what we're trying to do with Tiny Seed. So to be clear, I don't run Tiny Seed. My wife and I are just investors.
Got it.
Rob Walling and Einar Volset are running that, and I think they've put money into 9 or 10 companies so far. So fingers crossed that goes well.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense and it's a great initiative. I mean, come to think of it, it seems like common sense, like, I mean, why aren't more people doing this, But I think there is a certain sense of, I think what the problem is, especially in India, like raising money is equated to success. As soon as you raise money, people think that you're successful. And I think a lot of people, especially the investors, especially the big ones, have burned their hands trying to do this. And now they've realized that, you can't always do that. And raising money necessarily does not have to mean successful. It can, and it has the statistics. I think I read it somewhere. I might be wrong, but I think the investors about 2-3 years ago had in total invested about $80 billion into the Indian startups and probably made about 6 billion back. That's like a huge number. And that's the case with most venture capped ecosystems or venture capped startups. So yeah. I think Tiny Seed is a great idea. I wish you all the best even for that. I mean, in whatever capacity you're involved. I would like to let you go, but just before that, do you have a message for our beautiful audience here who are great fans of you? They're all budding, aspiring digital marketers. They're trying to get their foot inside. And what is your advice to them?
Gosh, the thing that has been most successful for me in my career is helping other people and then relying on people to be kind and wonderful back to me. And that, I can't recommend it enough. It's not only a great business tactic, right? If you are awesome to the people around you and you're constantly helping them and not asking for anything in return, not only does that come back to you in spades, it also is a great way to live, right? It builds friendships, it builds relationships, it makes you feel part of this connected force of humanity that's you're part of something bigger than just yourself. When other people succeed, you can cheer for them unabashedly. I would strongly urge anyone who's thinking about, what's one thing I can do? Who can I help today? How can I help them? I don't need anything from them. I just want to help. Tell me what I can do. If you're asking yourself that and doing that on a regular basis, I promise your business life will get better, your personal life will get better.
That's beautiful advice, Rand. Thank you very much. And when do you think we will be able to see Rand Fishkin in blood and flesh in India? Anytime soon?
Oh gosh. I mean, to be honest, I gotta put my head down and focus on SparkToro for a bit. But yeah, let's see how the next year or two go with that company, and if it takes off and does well, then yeah, maybe I can make a visit.
Thank you very much. Anyway, this was amazing talking to you, Rand, and we got to learn so much about so many things. Thank you very much for being here. I know you're a very, very busy man, and I wish you all the best with SparkToro and everything else that you're doing. Thank you very much again.
Oh, thank you, Sanjay. I'm really excited for what you guys are up to as well, and please let me know if I can ever be of help in the future. Take care.
Sure. Thank you.